They thought she was just some logistics officer, quiet, unranked, unimportant. They were wrong. It was the kind of heat that baked through the soles of your boots before you even reached the flight line. The airbase buzzed with Joint Force personnel, Americans, French, Brazilians, Canadians, all prepping for the multinational Apache sim rotation. Everyone was either in uniform or trying hard to look like they were born in it. And then Avery Quinn stepped off the transport van. She didn't look like the others. Her olive green flight jacket was faded, soft from too many reissues. Her boots were clean, but not new. Her hair was pulled back, no visible rank or call sign on her chest, just a name patch, Quinn. No ribbons, no bravado, no one greeted her. She didn't seem to mind. She moved calmly across the tarmac, clipboard in hand, avoiding the camera crew from the Belgian press unit already setting up near the tower. Nobody paid her much attention. That was normal. That was part of it. "Who's that?" a young pilot asked loudly, lounging near the staging tent. His patch read Talon in silver thread. He didn't whisper, he wanted to be heard. "Logistics?" Another chuckled. "Maybe PR. They've been floating those types around lately to diversify the footage." Talon smirked. "She looks like she's here to check our hydration levels or smile quotas." The group laughed tight, rehearsed, cruel. But Avery didn't flinch. She heard it. Of course she heard it. But she didn't turn, didn't react, just reviewed the mission board. Her name was nowhere near the top. Reserve Evaluator, non-flying. That's all it said. And then came the brush-off. A logistics officer walked past her with a clipboard and a rehearsed nod. "Non-combat role, you'll need to clear the flight ring. We're staging live entries now." She nodded once, nothing more. As she stepped away, the breeze caught the collar of her jacket and lifted it slightly, just enough for the sun to catch a glimpse of ink just beneath her left ear. "Wait, hold up," someone said. "What's that?" another tech asked, squinting. "Is that a tattoo? Looks like coordinates." "Maybe it's where she lost her phone," someone joked. "Or her influencer profile link." Talon didn't even look up. "Ghost branding," he said flatly. "Probably fake clearance ink. Edgy." They laughed again. Avery adjusted her collar slowly, smoothing it back down, not rushed, not defensive, just precise, just deliberate. She walked calmly toward the rear staging zone, where support staff were laying out cables for the next test run. She didn't speak. She didn't explain. But if anyone had been watching closely, really watching, they might have noticed something odd. She didn't move like someone who'd been sidelined. She moved like someone waiting. One tech saw her check the wind flags at the far fence and mutter something under her breath. The direction was shifting low crosswind building across the northern ridge. She clocked it instantly. Still, no one cared. Avery moved to the utility crates and began inspecting gear straps, tie-downs, crate weights, all standard, all silent, every motion exact. The pilots kept posturing for cameras. Talon stretched dramatically under the wing of an idle Apache, sipping a canned energy drink like it was a trophy. "She here for morale support or what?" he shouted. "You'd think someone with a clipboard that's serious could at least look like she knows what she's doing." More laughter. Still, she didn't respond. The mission schedule updated. Her name stayed buried at the bottom. The instructors passed her by without eye contact. The flight roster was full. She would not be flying. At least not yet. Later that evening, Avery returned to her quarters. They were simple, bare, just a cot, a locker, a desk, and a low lamp. She sat down, laced boots still on, and unfolded a faded flight chart, the same one she had carried for years. The same one that had belonged to her father. In the top left corner, scrawled in black ink, were two lines. N 33 degrees, 17.3. E 44 degrees, 23.1. Ghost 6. The tattoo on her neck, same numbers. She had inked them herself, years ago, quietly, precisely, not as a memorial but as a blueprint. They had called that flight corridor unflyable. Her father had disappeared trying to prove otherwise. The report had said mechanical failure, but she had seen the original maneuver overlays. The data wasn't flawed, it was just unfinished. And now? She was going to finish it. Not to be seen, not to be celebrated. To prove it could be done. The next morning, the sim floor buzzed with activity. Bright lights, touchscreens, flight telemetry scrolling in rapid pulses across every wall. NATO instructors briefed pilots in clipped English and faster French. Press crews adjusted cameras. Everyone wanted a clean demo, no drama, no surprises. Avery Quinn walked in unnoticed. She didn't need to be there early, but she always was. While the rest of the candidates laughed near the entry wall, Avery found the corner table, the one with no name tags, no assigned chairs. She placed a folded flight overlay on the metal surface. No one paid attention. She didn't need them to. The pattern she reviewed wasn't from the day's mission brief. It was the corridor, his corridor. The impossible one. The numbers had lived in her mind for over a decade, cross-referenced, re-simulated, redrawn by hand on dozens of platforms. She knew them better than she knew her own handwriting. And today, the wind was right. She made a small adjustment on the printout, a minor axis shift, to account for thermal drift. She didn't check the time. Her fingers moved with steady rhythm, tracing the same curves her father once flew, but this time, finished. Behind her, boots echoed across the tile. Talon entered with 2 junior pilots trailing behind. All smiles, all swagger. His aviators were perched on his vest, and he looked like he had already won something. "Morning," he called out, fake casual. "Hope our note-taker from logistics got a good night's sleep." The other pilots snickered. He glanced toward Avery's table and made a face. "You prepping data or folding paper cranes?" he asked, pointing at her charts. Avery said nothing. She simply folded the graph in half and tucked it under her clipboard. The lead instructor arrived seconds later, a man with a buzz cut, high cheekbones, and a voice like concrete scraping metal. "Quinn," he said, not even making full eye contact, "you're on protocol observation. No SIM access. Stay behind the ops rail." She nodded once. No protest. No questions. She moved to the back line as ordered, clipboard in hand. The room grew hotter as more equipment powered up. Drone cameras, visual relays, diagnostics. Talon swaggered toward the SIM capsule. "They're calling this run unflyable, huh?" he said over his shoulder. "Guess I'll try not to embarrass the chart lady back there." He slid into the pilot's seat, adjusted the harness like it was an accessory, and gave a thumbs up to the tech crew. The SIM booted. On screen, the corridor appeared, a jagged terrain profile layered with unpredictable windbursts, narrow drop arcs, and a nasty cross-current from the east. It was the same pattern Avery had studied since she was 16, only now dressed up with NATO overlays. Talon was cocky. Too cocky. His initial descent was late. His correction at 80 meters overshot the angle. He hit a thermal pocket too early, lost sync, and came in heavy. The system auto-compensated, saving the score barely. Avery didn't react. She made one quiet notation on her clipboard, not the mistake itself, but the timing. He was flying the numbers, not the wind. He didn't understand the corridor. He was mimicking, not navigating. When Talon exited the simulator, the instructors clapped lightly. The press snapped photos. He pointed toward Avery again. "Next time," he said, "maybe sit a little farther back. Don't want your spreadsheets throwing off the flight path." No one corrected him. The lead instructor simply walked past Avery and said, "You can wait outside." She nodded and stepped out into the hallway. The glass wall behind her offered a full view of the sim bay. Inside, Talon shook hands with reporters. Behind him, her pattern was still on screen just without her name. Avery stood at the observation rail for several minutes, silent. Still, the temperature outside the sim room had dropped slightly. The air felt heavier, not with heat, but with weight. The timing was wrong. The math was sloppy. Nobody noticed. Nobody except her. Later that evening, when the flight floor was empty and most of the staff had rotated out, Avery stayed behind, alone. She spread out the overlay again, this time on the drafting table under a flickering halogen lamp. Her hands moved with precision, adjusting the thrust arc, annotating yaw drift at key descent points, cross-referencing wind shear angles against her private notes. The chart wasn't a theory. It was a memory. A muscle memory passed down through silence, loss, and years of private training in borrowed hangars and dusty simulators. Behind her, the metal door opened. She didn't turn until she felt the room shift. The colonel had entered, quiet, deliberate, a man who never wasted words. He stepped into the glow of the table light. His eyes didn't go to her face. They went to her neck. The tattoo. Coordinates. Faint, etched with precision, hidden unless you knew to look. His voice was low, controlled. "Where did you get those numbers?" Avery straightened, met his eyes. "It's a site," she said. "And a name." His gaze dropped to the chart, his breath caught. "Ghost 6, he said, slowly. She nodded. "Yes, sir, my father." The colonel stared at the pattern, the sequence, the margins. "You finished it," he said. "You corrected the hover window, stabilized the drift. This flies." "I've tested it," Avery said calmly. "Real terrain, real elevation, real loads." The colonel didn't speak again. He just turned toward the door and said one phrase: "Prep the aircraft." The room went silent. The colonel's words hadn't been shouted. They didn't need to be. Just 4 syllables delivered with absolute certainty. "Prep the aircraft." A junior tech who'd just entered the hallway stopped in his tracks. He blinked. "Sir, she's not on the manifest. Her clearance." The colonel turned, voice calm but unshakable. "I said prep the aircraft, load her overlay, no assist, full telemetry, drop the pre-cleared protocols." His tone didn't invite debate. Within seconds, murmurs began to pass down the corridor. Ops leads materialized from the shadows. Data tablets lit up. The air shifted no longer heavy with heat, but with a different kind of pressure. Avery rolled up the chart, locking her pencil case without a word. Her hands moved as they always had, clean, precise, unfazed. She didn't thank him. She didn't look proud. She just nodded once and stepped past the colonel, headed toward the exit. He followed her with his eyes. "The Apache on Pad 3 is tuned for real correction," he said quietly. "That's the one we buried the project with." "I know," she replied. He paused. "You understand this is the same corridor your father died in?" "I do," she said, her pace steady. "But I'm not flying it to honor him. I'm flying it because it works." Outside, the sky was shifting from sand-blasted orange to muted violet. The ridge still radiated heat, but the worst of the sun had dipped below the horizon. The tarmac seemed to hold its breath. Avery Quinn stood alone beside the Apache on Pad 3, helmet tucked under one arm, flight gloves already pulled tight. The pre-flight crew had finished their checks and now stood back in a half circle, watching her uncertain, curious, almost reverent. Some had never seen her in a flight suit. Few even knew she was rated to fly. She zipped her collar to the top, stepped onto the loading step, and entered the cockpit without hesitation. No announcement, no camera flashes, no title. Just a silent understanding something was about to happen. Inside the Apache, the controls were already live. The systems greeted her like old friends. Fuel gate, nav sync, rotor torque, blade angle, all green. Her fingers moved with the same calm rhythm that had defined her life. Not fast, not flashy, just perfect. She adjusted the seat 2 notches, clicked the shoulder straps into place, and acknowledged tower clearance with a single word: copy. Nothing more. As the rotors spun to life, the pitch of the aircraft shifted. It wasn't loud, but it had weight, the kind of weight that silences commentary, the kind that changes posture. The tower watched. The colonel stood at the back of the ops room, arms crossed, eyes unblinking. Telemetry lit up. Data streamed in real time. Altitude, climbing. Heading, northeast ridge. Wind, variable, cross current, plus 2.6, at 300 m. Inside the cockpit, Avery's breath synced with the controls. One inhale on lift, one exhale on stabilizer lock. Her body didn't flinch when the nose dipped. This was the path she had studied since she was 16. This was the exact terrain where her father's aircraft had disappeared. But she wasn't thinking about that. She was thinking about pitch angle, fuel load, torque response, the feel of the wind pressure sliding across the airframe. The approach corridor narrowed natural rock, funneling airflow into chaotic spirals. It was the kind of terrain that punished hesitation and mocked arrogance. Avery didn't blink. She cut speed. At 200 meters, she initiated the ghost drop. The aircraft pitched forward with surgical grace, blades slicing into negative drift. Wind shear hit the left stabilizer. She compensated by 3 degrees, not steering out, just holding the line. Her father had overcorrected here. She didn't. At 120 meters, the thermal reversal struck unpredictable, violent. Any lesser pilot would have panicked, would have jerked the stick or nosed out of the corridor. Avery held her breath, adjusted thrust by 3%, rotated the nose by 4 degrees, let the rotors stabilize into balance, not resistance. Inside the tower, no one said a word. Even Talon had stopped talking. She held the hover for one full count, then initiated lateral slide, clearing the outcropping that had ended Ghost 6's flight. Her path held, the corridor opened. Only 60 meters remained before the canyon turned vertical. She didn't hesitate. Her fingers had already pre-calculated the thrust angle. She nudged the Apache upward smooth, silent, and cleared the final rock point by 8 meters. The aircraft soared into open air. Level. Flawless. Inside the tower, telemetry values updated line by line. Descent pattern. Within margin. Yaw sync. Aligned. Thermal response. Nominal. Final score. 100.0. The room didn't erupt. No cheers. No applause. Just stunned silence. Because they weren't watching a comeback. They were watching completion. Avery activated return clearance. Her voice was calm. One completed vector. Clear. Systems nominal. The colonel stepped forward. His eyes never left the screen. She brought the Apache back to pad 3 and landed with absolute control. No drift, no correction, just stillness. When the rotors stopped and the canopy lifted, the heat returned, but it felt different now, like the kind of heat that followed lightning. Avery stepped down, helmet under her arm, eyes steady. The crew didn't speak. One tech reached for a clipboard, then thought better of it. The colonel approached alone. In his hand, a single sheet of paper. "That's the first clean execution of that pattern in recorded history," he said. She nodded once. "I didn't clean it. I completed it." He handed her the page. "Final telemetry," he said. "Full clearance. Call sign logged." She took it without looking. She already knew what it said. He studied her face a moment longer. "Your father didn't fail," he said quietly. "He was first." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. The Apache rested in stillness. Its blades ticked gently as they cooled, the tarmac beneath shimmering with residual heat. Most of the base had shifted to chow or debrief stations, but the airfield didn't feel empty, it felt changed. As if something had passed through and left the silence different. Avery Quinn walked alone across the concrete, her flight helmet tucked beneath one arm, her gloves looped through the other. She didn't head to the control tower. She didn't check the updated board. She didn't speak. Instead, she made her way to the bench behind the hangar, the same one the maintenance crew used during breaks. She sat without ceremony, pulled a cloth from her pocket, and began wiping down the gloves slow, methodical, not because they needed cleaning, but because it was the rhythm she knew, grounding. Practical. The kind of quiet habit that made her, her. From a distance, a wheeled cart rattled once, then faded. A bird cut across the ridge in silhouette. The horizon darkened. No spotlight followed. No press badge hovered nearby. This moment wasn't for them. It never had been. Footsteps approached, measured, familiar. She didn't look up until the colonel stopped beside the bench. He said nothing at first. In his left hand, he held a small envelope, worn at the edges, sealed with a simple crease. Avery stood. Her expression didn't change. He held the envelope out. She opened it carefully. Inside, a patch. Faded, worn, black stitching still clear. Ghost 6. And beneath it, a single clearance card. Her photo, her ID, and stamped at the bottom, Ghost 7 active. Neither of them spoke. Finally, he said, "You flew it clean." She nodded. It wasn't for them. He met her eyes. It was for him. She didn't smile. She didn't weep. She folded the envelope and tucked it into the side pocket of her flight jacket with the same calm precision she gave every part of her day. The colonel didn't salute. He didn't shake her hand. He turned and walked away with the same quiet finality he'd had when he first said, "Prep the aircraft." She watched him go. Then she sat back down, finished wiping the gloves. The light shifted. Overhead, someone in the tower reset the manifest. A faint mechanical click echoed in the background as the new line blinked onto the system. Ghost 7 active. No announcement, no fanfare, no congratulations. Just recognition, quiet and absolute. Those who noticed didn't ask. Those who understood said nothing. When Avery stood again, she touched the edge of the bench one last time and walked toward the far end of the pad. The Apache behind her sat motionless, cast in the last hue of evening. It had flown the same corridor her father never returned from. And now, it waited. No longer haunted, Avery didn't look back. Her boots struck soft grit along the edge of the tarmac, the painted lines broke into gravel, and still she moved forward one step, then another, her shoulders relaxed, her collar open. Dust clung to her sleeves, but her spine was straight. There were no medals on her chest. No headline would carry her name. But those who had seen it would remember, not because she demanded it, but because they couldn't not remember. Her quietness had reshaped the entire airfield, not with noise, but with proof. Later that night, as the hangars dimmed and the generator hummed its low, even pulse, the gossip started to die down. Someone in the briefing hall finally asked, "Who was she?" And someone else, voice lower, simply replied, "She flew Ghost 6's pattern, and she made it work." That was all. That was enough. Avery Quinn didn't rise to the moment. She'd been ready all along. She didn't need to be loud. She didn't need to defend herself. She knew her worth, and when the world finally paused long enough to notice, she simply flew. This is the story of quiet strength, of legacy honored not by applause, but by action. A reminder that greatness doesn't always knock down doors. Sometimes it just walks through them, calm, prepared, and unstoppable. Have you ever met someone whose silence carried more power than any speech? Tell us in the comments, because sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one who rewrites history.